Hey guys, it's Jay, and today I want to bring you what I'm assuming is going to be my last video on VR until the actual release in October. Unless, of course, we get some kind of crazy exciting news at E3, but I'm not really expecting that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say in October I'll pick up VR videos again when I actually get to show you some gameplay. But there are a few things I want to talk about here. There's a lot of people out there down talking VR and talking about why it's going to fail, and they always give one of four excuses. And so I wanted to go ahead and debunk these excuses today. So the first one I want to talk about isn't really one of the most popular ones, but it's coming from a very powerful source in gaming. Take-Two CEO Strauss Zelnick. Take-Two, by the way, is the parent company of Rockstar and 2K, which are both fairly prominent gaming developers in, Grand Theft Auto 3, Red Dead Redemption, things like that fall under this guy's scope. And he takes the anti-social argument. He says, and I quote, "I think for a core gamer, it could be a wonderful experience, someone who really likes to be immersed. But a lot of people who play video games, for example my kids, they play with their friends sitting next to them. So that technology is not going to appeal to them, so I think it's very much a core technology." And this quote actually makes me pretty mad because it's coming from somebody who could actually have a pretty strong impact on the success or failure of VR. And it's completely flawed. And I feel like this is the same type of mindset that caused the Wii to fail, but I'll get to that later. The thing about the antisocial argument is that games are not played that way anymore. Today, gamers are very social, but most gamers have friends and groups of friends that they play with on a regular basis that they have never met in real life, that they will never meet in real life. Online gaming is how gaming is done now. You got games like Overwatch that don't even let you play unless you are online. So when I hear somebody say, like, the problem with VR is that you put a headset on and you block out the room around you, so it's so antisocial. My first thought is this still 1995? We have come a long way in gaming from the days of sitting there trying to beat the next level of Super Mario Brothers, handing the controller back and forth with your sibling every time you die. That is not gaming anymore. When you look at the lineup, let's just talk PSVR specifically. When you look at the game lineup coming out, you got games like Riggs, Eve Valkyrie, Ace Combat 7, World War Tunes, just a Gran Turismo. The list goes on of very social-oriented multiplayer games that are going to be every bit as social as the most social games that we play now, like Call of Duty and Battlefield. And just because you're not going to be handing the headset back and forth with somebody sitting next to you doesn't mean that no one's going to want PSVR. In fact, I'll admit that I still go to friends' houses and sit next to them and play games with them, but it is such a minor form of gaming anymore that it really bothers me that a CEO of a major gaming organization still views games that way. And the next argument you hear a lot is no expensive peripheral has ever been successful. And people will point to the PlayStation Move, the Xbox Kinect. They'll even go as far back as to talk about the Power Glove for Nintendo, or those like Dance Dance Revolution pads and crap like that never really caught on, never was successful, and they say, see, people aren't willing to spend a lot of money on peripherals. That's just stupid. And I was going to go on sort of a tangent here and talk about a bunch of peripherals that were successful, but I just want to say, if you are someone who believes that no one is willing to spend hundreds of dollars on gaming peripherals, then Scuff Gaming and Turtle Beach would like to have a conversation with you. The fact is that in order for a peripheral to be successful, it needs to accomplish two things. Number one, it has to either change the experience or give you a competitive edge. And number two, it has to do either one of those things at such a high level that it is worth the price. So the inherent idea that no one is going to pay a bunch of money for a peripheral is completely wrong, because you could easily spend $1, $2, even up to $300 on a gaming headset or on a specialized controller or a gaming monitor, things like that frankly you don't actually need to make the game work, but do enhance the experience. So another argument you hear a lot is that gamers don't want to stand up. They don't want a lot of extra movement. Gamers want to sit on the couch, kick their feet up, and hold a controller. And people point to the failure of the Move controller, the failure of the Xbox Kinect, the ultimate fall from grace of the Nintendo Wii. And they say, see, all these things tried to get people out of their seats and tried to get people to play the games in a different way, and they all failed because in the end, people want the Xbox or PlayStation experience where you're sitting on the couch holding a controller. And to those people, I want to say 2 words. Rock Band. Or Guitar Hero, however you want to say it. Because there was a 2 or 3 year span where those games were unbelievably popular. I never personally liked them, which was very aggravating to me because every single time I would go to a friend's house, it would eventually become, so who wants to play Rock Band? And it was aggravating to me. But what Rock Band did was it proved both the previous statement about no expensive peripherals and this one about no extra movements completely wrong, because it had people paying hundreds of dollars for toy guitars, toy drum sets, microphones, everything else, and it got them off the couch and standing up in their living room, and it was wildly popular. It was unbelievably popular, and the fact is, like, eventually it did die. Yes, the trend or the fad that was Guitar Hero eventually died, but it wasn't because people didn't want to stand up anymore. It wasn't because people didn't want to throw money at it anymore. The reason that it died is because there's nowhere to take it. There is no evolution of Guitar Hero. People often make fun of me for getting Call of Duty year after year and say, don't you realize you're just buying the same game with different maps and guns every year? And I'm like, well, yeah, but I mean, maps and guns are core gameplay mechanics. Like that, Call of Duty is very different every year because of the maps and guns. So yeah, I don't mind buying that every year. But then I look at them and they're buying Guitar Hero, then Guitar Hero 2, then Guitar Hero 3, and whatever. And it's like, don't you realize that you are literally buying the exact same game with a different soundtrack? Because that is literally the only difference. But that's why it failed, because there's nowhere to take it. There's nowhere to move forward beyond, lights flying at you and your rhythmic gameplay. But people loved it. Frankly, when the Wii launched, the Wii was unbelievably popular when it launched. Like, it was you couldn't get one within the first year. I mean, it seriously was that bad. You had to stand in line for the next shipment to come in rather than just the midnight release. It was crazy how popular that system was. And you know what? It wasn't because people looked at the Wii and said, yay, another sitting on the couch holding a controller experience. It was because people wanted that extra movement. People wanted that different gameplay. They wanted to mix it up. And honestly, a lot of developers at that time, just like this guy from Take-Two, saying, people don't really want this. A lot of people back then said, people don't really want this, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what happened was that the Wii was capable of so much, and Wii Sports, the game that actually came with it, showed you what it was capable of. And then nobody did anything with it. So let's talk about Madden for a second. Madden, on any other system, if you hike the ball, each player has a button assigned to them, A, B, X, Y, whatever. When you see one of them open, you push the button, it throws the ball to them. So when Madden came out for the Wii, I was so excited. I couldn't wait to see what kind of crazy, awesome movements they had. And am I going to be able to kick my chair out of the way and drop back in the pocket and do a throwing motion and all this stuff? I was super excited. And frankly, all of that stuff is stuff that the Wii was capable of. But what ended up being was you hike the ball and each character has a direction assigned to them. So you hold that direction on the D-pad, you flick your wrist, and it throws the ball to them. It was literally exactly like playing it on another console, except you added a little flick of the wrist. And it's like, well, this is completely lame. It didn't take advantage of the Wii's abilities at all, because the developers didn't think that's what people wanted. The developers were like, oh, we don't want to mess with that. That's just a fad, and nobody really wants to get out of their chair, and nobody really wants to play in a different way. And like I said, it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the fact is that Wii Fit, Wii Sports, Rock Band, and Guitar Hero, all four were wildly popular games that show people that they are willing to pay for expensive peripherals if they're worth it, and they are willing to stand up and find a different way to play and embrace it if the developers will embrace it, which they didn't. And so things like the PlayStation Move, the Xbox Kinect, and the Wii all died. And the last one I want to debunk is the idea that it's just a fad. I am going to foresee the future right now with you. It is not a fad. And the reason it's not a fad is because VR is so much more than just taking the video off of your television and putting it in front of your face. It is an unbelievable level of immersion. They don't even use the term immersion anymore when talking about VR. They use the term presence, and that is the new gold standard for VR immersiveness. It's presence. And the reason that this is so important, the reason that this is because your brain is really stupid. It is easily fooled. For example, VR technology right now is being tested by medical doctors as a possible treatment for phantom limb pain. If you don't know, whenever somebody loses an arm or a leg, a lot of times the nerves in those arms will feel a lot of pain, like they're constantly clenching a fist. And it causes the person a lot of pain. It's called phantom limb pain. And they have actually done studies where they'll do like a box trick. I think House did this on his show one time, where he stuck the guy's arm in a box with a mirror in it. He stuck the guy's other arm in the same box, and it tricked his mind into thinking that he had both arms because of the mirror work. They are now doing the same type of thing with VR, where they're letting people with no limb play catch, cook dinner, clench and unclench their fist, and they have been getting a lot of promising results with the treatment for phantom limb pain. That's just an example of how VR technology is being used outside of gaming. And there's another good example of this, of just what exactly VR is. So think about this for a second. The Walk VR experience was something that they put on with PlayStation VR, by the way, at different movie theaters to help promote their movie The Walk. The Walk, of course, is about the tightrope walker who walks between the Twin Towers. And the VR experience put you on top of the Twin Towers and had you walk across the tightrope. And this is a perfect example to me of what VR is capable of, because there's this spectrum, and on one end of the spectrum there is walking across a tightrope in a video game. Anyone who's played a video game that has a balancing mechanic in it knows that the only thing that matters to them is how annoying the balancing mechanic is. It's just something you have to just kind of get through to progress the story along. But it's not something that you have ever in any way thought, oh man, I don't know about this. I'm not sure I want to walk across this. It's so high up. Because there's no real immersion to it. And then on the other far end of the spectrum, there is actually walking a tightrope, which is something that 99.9% of us would never even consider doing. Then somewhere in the middle, there is walking a tightrope in VR, which is something that everyone would be willing to do because your conscious mind is smart. You know that you're not in any real danger. But as soon as you put on the VR headset, and you can look up videos of people doing this, as soon as they put on the headset and they start walking forward, you can see natural fear in them. They're taking very short, deliberate steps. They look off balance. A couple people actually fall down. Someone screams. Like, there is actual fear and anxiety in them, despite the fact that their conscious mind knows that they are not in any danger. Their subconscious is sending the signal to their body that they're in danger, that they're afraid. And you can see it manifest in them. It is a level of immersion that we have never seen before. And this can be a detriment to it as well. A lot of people hear about simulator sickness. The way motion sickness works on a very simplistic level is your mind gets double messages. So think about this. Think about you're riding in a car, someone else is driving. And, you know, when the car moves left, car moves right, car accelerates, it decelerates, your body is feeling that. Whether you know it or not, your body is feeling that. But it's okay because what you're feeling matches what you're seeing outside the window, outside the windshield. So your body is telling your mind that you're moving around. At the same time, your eyes are telling your mind that you're moving around. Now imagine that you pull out a book and you start reading that book. You may be able to see a little bit out the window through your peripheral vision, but your main focus are the words of the book. The thing about that is that when the car moves left, car moves right, car goes over a bump, car speeds up, car slows down, the book is doing all of that with it. So your body is telling your mind that you're moving, but your eyes are staring at a stationary object, telling your mind that you're stationary. And it can have a very detrimental effect on people. It can really mess with their equilibrium and make them feel ill, make them feel sick, maybe even make them throw up. Some people are more susceptible than others. Some people don't have any problem reading a book in a car. Other people have problems riding in a car in the first place. But that, in its simplest form, is how motion sickness works. And simulator sickness in VR is the exact opposite of that. What it is your body is sitting still while your eyes are seeing all this motion in front of you and around you, and that messes with your equilibrium. And some people can only play VR for 10 or 15 minutes before they're running for a bucket. Other people have no problem with it. But the point is that VR immerses you to such a degree that your brain actually believes the signals that it's receiving. Your mind believes that you are there to the degree that you get a physical manifestation of illness based on the immersion that you're feeling in the game. That is why VR is not a fad. I mentioned earlier that in order for a peripheral to succeed, it has to either change the game or add a competitive edge to the user, and it has to do those things at a level that is worthy of the price tag. And I can tell you right now, VR is going to change gaming. It is not going to replace gaming. I've been accused of this by people in my life that say, like, I don't understand how you think that console gaming is just going to go away and VR is going to take over. And I'm like, that's not what I think at all. What I think is that soon we're going to have console gaming and VR gaming, and they're both going to be mainstream. I don't think that the traditional gameplay style is going anywhere. But I also don't think VR is going anywhere. And I think that once people get their hands on it and they feel the presence that you feel in a VR game, and they see just how immersive and just how incredible the experience is, it's going to spread and it's going to be successful, so long as people like this guy from Take-Two don't just assume that we're still living in the mid-90s and refuse to make games for it. So thanks for listening and watching. I'm sorry the video ran so long. I won't take up any more of your time. Goodbye.